I was 19 and unhappy at home and unemployed and an instigator. And I liked video cameras. So naturally, I said to my friend Nikki, how about we do a YouTube show where we go to all these small towns we've never been to, right? And we give ourselves 12 hours to try to find somebody there who seems like they'd be willing to commit murder for a hire. Well, that idea had certain massive legal issues. Plus, as Nikki pointed out, we were too young to drink in bars, where a lot of those explorations would probably have to take place. So then we settled on an idea that, looking back, was almost as problem-rich. You know how when you're out parking your car in some lot after dark, sometimes there's one car mysteriously off all the way by itself, and someone's sitting in it. And you think, okay, what creepy thing is going on there? Nikki and I wanted to film ourselves actually going up to those cars, tapping on the window, and saying, "What you doing?" That, in fact, would be the name of our YouTube show. Permissions and privacy concerns were of no interest to us. We thought we were going to get famous. That was 16 years ago. A very different me. 4 videos were shot before we stopped doing our alleged show, and all the footage was erased from my camera before any sort of editing got done. Things just got out of hand too quickly, is all. Nicky died 4 years ago. He got high and drove his old Honda Accord at 90 miles an hour into the side of a Chinese restaurant, long after he should have matured out of the ugly behaviors that almost took me down too. In the first video, we approached an SUV parked at the very edge of the lot behind Eugene V. Debs High in the neighborhood next to ours. We'd just been driving around waiting to spot something like that. A single vehicle sitting alone under a lamppost with someone just faintly visible in the front seat. Maybe up to no good. Or better yet, something embarrassing. I wasn't at all nervous as I walked up to the driver's side door. Nikki was working the camera behind me. The window rolled down before I got to within 10 feet of the car. A youngish guy in a thick beard glared at me and said, real low and strong and direct, "Turn around and walk back slow." And I thought, okie dokie. And I did just that. I wasn't a complete idiot. Nikki and I got back in the Accord his grandma had bought him and drove off. The very next morning, I swear to God, we found out that cops had arrested a guy in a house right over the fence from that parking lot on a murder charge. He'd killed his sister a month before and tried to hide her body in their attic. Nikki and I spotted the guy from the SUV in a photo. He was one of the cops leading the perp out of a courtroom a few days later. So we figured we'd literally almost blown this guy's kind of important stakeout with our shenanigans. Try number 2 was only weirder. Nikki pointed out a van idling in the lot beside the Seven Bells Tennis and Aquatic Center, which had just closed for good the year before. A lot of trees around that lot, so it looked extra spooky at a little past 2 in the morning. It was real windy that night, too. I said to Nikki, "Let's do it." Certainly no idling van could be good news for anyone at that time of night. We couldn't believe our eyes when we got close. It wasn't a person behind the wheel. It was a big puppet, almost the size of me, propped up in the front seat. Both of its plastic arms had been taped to the wheel in a really crude way, layer after redundant layer of electrical tape, fastening the arms there in place. That puppet was ready to hit the open road. The thing that really got me was that the head was turned completely around 180 degrees, facing the other direction, through the rear window. It had big bushy hair and rosy cheeks and a weird smile, and the van just kept idling. Nikki and I went back to the Accord and sat in it and waited. Surely someone would be coming out of the building at some point. But that never happened. I got kind of a chill when all of a sudden its engine conked out and everything went quiet. Must have run out of gas, Nikki said. From our angle, we could just see that head, barely a silhouette in the dark. Finally, we left. Figured we'd come back later. We got pancakes at the diner, and when we went back, the van was gone. Nikki thought that just maybe someone was about to try to fake their own death, drive the van over a ravine or something, as if that would have worked. And the more I thought about it, the more I could kind of see how that might have played out. Because what else could possibly have been going on there? I started to get this feeling then that something might be wrong with what we were doing at a cosmic level, like a warning from the gods or something. But I was still searching for a grim thrill that drinking or bush league drugs or drag racing on Route 9 was not giving me. So, Nikki and I saddled up again a week later, around midnight. Looking back, I could see maybe that Nikki was feeling uneasy now, too, a little around the edges. You didn't have to believe in God or fate or the wheel of destiny to believe in simple mojo, and ours did not feel right. We had no promising video subjects almost all night, but finally at almost 3, we saw a really ancient-looking station wagon parked alone at St. Luther Missionary Baptist, which sits beside an endless cornfield. Not even any lampposts in that lot, so everything was real dark. Nikki and I swung in, and he suggested that we switch up, and he would approach the car, and I could work the camera. So I coached him real quick on how to say, "What you doing?" real loud when he saw a good chance, and out we went. It was turning late autumn then, and I remember as we got closer seeing that the windows of the station wagon had gotten a little fogged up. That station wagon was in terrible shape, a lot of the paint worn or stripped off, a big spidery crack in the rear windshield. Nikki went up to the driver's side window and tapped, but there was no answer. He leaned and peered in as best he could with his hands walled on either side of his eyes to focus better. I got to within 2 feet of the car and activated the tacky light on top of the camera. But then suddenly Nikki was turning away and pulling on my arm. He said, "Dude, let's go, come on," and very assertively guided me away from the car and back toward his Accord. He wasted no time getting us out of the parking lot, leaving the station wagon to sit there under the shadow of the church, beside all those acres of withered cornstalks. The video wound up showing nothing, really. The camera light created a bright spot on the window glass that pretty much blocked out any good view of the interior. So I had to rely on Nikki to tell me what he saw that had freaked him out. There were literally like 10 people in there, he told me. 5 up front, 5 in the back, smushed together side by side. No way they could have dealt with that for long. Normal-looking people, all dressed the same, I think. Real plain. All of them were looking at me. Not mad, not angry. Happy, I found them almost. Just kind of like, "You can come in too if you want." I remember he started to put his cigarette out against the newspaper box outside the diner, but then stopped and kept trying to smoke it. "They were so wrong," he said. "I can't describe it, man. They were so wrong." After that, Nikki was out. We were messing around with his model rockets in the big field beside his grandma's house, and he said he didn't want to do the show anymore, as if we even had one. He felt nothing but bad vibes. I said, "Yeah, well, whatever, we'll just do something else." He seemed relieved. I couldn't believe it could all be this weird, that every time a video was made, something bizarre was happening. But we agreed we'd let it all go. Still, yes, there was, in the end, a 4th video, and it's really just the 4th one that matters. I never set out intentionally to make it. It was mid-December and raining, and I was coming back home from the used record store at about 1 in the afternoon. There was a big, ancient parking lot beside the abandoned Kmart with the weeds growing through the pavement. We used to skateboard there till they got out of hand. And there was an old white van sitting almost perfectly in the middle of that big expanse. And it had its headlights on, and the engine was running. On the side of it, there was a big painted image of a wicker basket loaded up with bread and rolls and such. A very weird thing happened as I slowed my father's Mercury on the road beside the lot. I was almost overcome by a nostalgia for a time I didn't even really remember. And I thought, wouldn't that just be the thing right now? A nice warm muffin or something like that? Wouldn't that make this ugly day, this ugly year, this ugly life in this ugly town partly bearable? It was such a powerful, sudden yearning, it was scary. I hadn't been all that hungry 5 minutes before, but now I got fixated on eating something really wholesome and homemade. I pulled into the parking lot. What was so coincidental was that I had my video camera with me, tossed aside in its cloth bag and forgotten weeks before. So I figured, hey, let's see if the creepy string holds up, right? Just one more video. So I took it and got out. God, that desire for something nice to eat, something freshly baked, like I was a kid again. I barely even noticed the cold rain. The driver's side window rolled down slow, and someone in the front seat opened the door outward. I came a little closer, and I hit the record button. It was a woman in there, a woman with very long white hair, and she was dressed all in black, the kind of work clothes you wear if you're a chef or something. She was smiling, and she stretched her left arm out toward me into the rain. Her palm was tilted up, and on it sat what I thought was some kind of pastry or Danish. I remember a wave of simple happiness at that sight. But then something in me seemed to cry out to stop, get a hold of myself, and walk away. Because something here was so terrible, it might mean the end of everything, the end of my very life. It wasn't an inner voice so much as a primordial shout from deep within my spine. And it was almost involuntarily that I turned and started moving back to the Mercury. The active movement seemed to unlock my fight or flight mechanism completely. And in the next instant, I'd gone from a trot to an outright run. I got into the car, I threw it into reverse, floored the gas pedal, and backed all the way to the road before straightening out, skidding a little. I mumbled words of comfort to myself all the way home, asking myself again and again what had just happened. And I wasn't hungry anymore. No, indeed. I couldn't bring myself to watch that tape back then, but I couldn't bring myself to erase it either. It went into deep storage in my parents' basement, and my memories of the day nested in an uncomfortable corner of my mind year after year. 16 of them went by before I randomly came across something in my reading that cohered things for me in a terrible way. That was when I decided to buy an old high 8mm video camera on eBay to be able to finally play the tape, the camera I used to own, long gone. I dug the tape out of a dusty plastic tote, sat down in the house I grew up in and where I and my wife and my kids now live, and revisited the past alone. There is a specter in the old mythology of the British Isles, a malignant ghost that found its way into oral tradition sometime around Europe's harshest time of witch hunting and paranoia. She was known, so I read, simply as the Baker. She's believed to present herself to those on the very precipice of surrendering to some dark and awful path they have created for themselves. And her profession represents temptation. Her desire is to lure, though apparently she does not speak. She only seems to promise something good to eat. Only those with the strength to take a second look at what she really offers recognize her danger. There's a very dry debate in obscure academic texts over whether the baker's legend was first seeded from accounts of an actual historical person. June Clacton, a woman condemned to hang in 1646 in St. Osyth, Essex, after being accused of cooking parts of 5 small children into the clap bread she sold at market. I have seen a reproduction of a woodcut of her depicted beside her grave, from which she seems to have risen. She wears the basic clothing of her profession that her time dictated. Playing the tape late at night, I felt my stomach drop as soon as the shaky frame took in the entire van, the logo of the unnamed bakery spattered by rain. I made myself keep watching, often going frame by frame, back and forth, pausing and unpausing so often I thought I might break the tape. My long-ago moment of defensive panic in that parking lot came just before the camera lens got close enough to take in the front interior of the van, and what little could be seen there went past in an unsalvageable 3-frame blur. But I was able to see, with disturbing clarity as captured in that gray daylight on video, that what the woman held in her upturned palm out toward me in the rain was not at all a piece of pastry I might have much enjoyed in my famished state. I think it was a large, messy lump of human skin. I think it was a face, actually folded in half so as to fit neatly in her palm. Pause on pause, frame by frame, back and forth. I saw a hazel eye in that mass. I saw a shriveled nose. And I believe that the face was meant to be my own. What did I do, I wonder, on that day or sometime before or after, consciously or unconsciously, to avoid sliding into darkness forever, to avoid going where she was inviting me? Why should I have been able to somehow go on to build a good life for myself, while Nicky kept spiraling toward his own wretched path and died so young? And why do I feel convinced that if I play the tape again, right now, she will no longer be there?